Welcome to Sell Like You, the ultimate sales podcast that will teach you how to make sales your superpower, transform your mindset, and in doing so, explode your sales beyond your wildest dreams. I'm Harriet Meller, and over the last 17 years, I've helped hundreds of top companies around the world, including my own, make more money and qualify more leads using simple strategies that work. In this podcast, you'll learn how I generated over 10 million in annual sales, along with the sales techniques, processes, and tools that will work for you to generate more dream-aligned clients and scale your business beyond what you thought was possible. If you're sick of the boring, outdated, and pushy sales tactics of the past, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Michael,
yes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You're the guy that does the thing of the airline thing, isn't it?
Something like that. Some grey-haired guy who thinks he's cool with the kids and plays for a living as an adult on social media.
That's a great description of a creative. I think so.
Maybe, I don't know. I'm a lot of things, but I can't put maybe one title to it.
If you were introducing yourself to somebody, what would you say? What would you say you are? What do you want to be known for?
It depends on who I'm talking to, I guess.
Talking to Harriet on the Sell Like You podcast.
Okay, so if I'm talking to Harriet, I'm the guy who is probably working his ass off in some crazy thing called social media right now. If you would have told me this would be my adulting job 12 years ago, I would have laughed at you. I'm on a journey to fix some shit in the work that we do, but also trying to make as much money so I can get back farming as quickly as I can.
Okay, so a farmer at heart.
I'll always be a farmer at heart.
Wow. What kind of animals?
It would have been a mixture of dairy, livestock, but again, for me, the dream is a petting farm, an open farm, coffee shop, B&B, and maybe talk a bit of shit about social from time to time when there's not enough produce in the open farm to sell. I don't know. Maybe I'm just watching Jeremy Clarkson's farm way too much.
Yeah, I've heard good things about that.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
I think he's done some amazing stuff. People love him or hate him, but what he's done to give a great perspective on the struggles and the realities of farming life, I think is exceptional. And doing it in a funny way too, in a way that made probably the general public feel less shit about their decisions on food.
And do you think then, are you drawn to him because of the way that he shows up?
I think it's the perfect mix. I think how he's made the show, like for years, Top Gear and shows like that have always been tried to make the technical and difficult entry points of a topic and make them digestible and accessible to more people. And I guess that's half the battle we have to do as well. And even that's why Clarkson's Farm, being a farmer at heart, I was always intrigued and interested. But it was a case of he actually told the stories about the most difficult and boring things, like how the weather impacts the profitability of barley and wheat. Who the fuck gives a shit about that in the regular world? But he did it in a way to show that that is an emotional point of tension every year that could make or break how profitable a farmer's life could be, and it could influence their next year of how they survive. But he did it in a way that was so fucking funny. I guess more people could understand it, not feel as bad, but still understood.
Yes. And do you think then that's what people find him charming because of that, or drawn to him because of that? Or do you think that's just who he is and we've just learned to love him?
Charming to that, and charming because he's a foolish, clumsy git as well. Yeah. And maybe I relate to that a bit too. Again, before we recorded this, I nearly smashed myself over a curb as we got good coffee in Perth.
Or okay coffee.
Palatable coffee.
Better than average.
That's probably another episode in itself. Keep me happy with coffee.
Yeah, I can see this coming. It'll be like Michael takes on coffee in the world, and then that would then be.
I love it. The other concept I have, and again, I'm probably sharing too much information, but was best places to have a poop in cities around the world. Okay. That's enough, because again, people always look for where's that nice clean place where you can again take care of your bum, and maybe people need to see that and understand that when they're traveling around the world, where's the best free places to do it that are the cleanest and smell lovely.
I reckon there's lots in Perth. So I'm going to tell you what my mum thinks about the toilets in Perth, not necessarily for pooping, just to clarify if mum's listening, sorry. But she loves how many public toilets we have, and the fact they're clean, the fact they have mirrors, the fact they have toilet paper, the fact they have, a working basin. Start. That's always key. Soap. She's big on hygiene. And so, yeah, I think that would be a good one. Maybe get mum on if that does come and she can share her Perth.
She could be my she could partner in this startup.
I'm not sure how she'd feel about the swearing, but I'm sure she'd see past it.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
I need to get better at that, by the way. I need to remember people are listening.
Sensitive ears. So creative. Let's get back to that conversation of creative, away from pooping, back to creative.
So people can Google you, they can find out more about you if they don't already know. I mean, who doesn't know about what you did at Ryanair? But I want to take that principle, because we had a great chat on the way here this morning, and I think the conversation drives to, let's see what other people are doing, and then let's do that. So they're taking away from the fact that actually what does align for them, their business, and they're looking at what you did at Ryanair and they're going, well, how do we apply that in our business? Because that clearly worked. What is the misconception in that?
I don't know if it's a misconception. I just think that there's been a separation in what are the very basics in marketing and how they manifest in this world of social media and content. And I'm trying to even unpack at the moment what are the main drivers of that. But I think it's the disconnect and the knowledge of basic marketing with the future social media professionals is probably something that's causing the biggest challenge, because and it's not difficult either. There's timeless truths when it comes to marketing. There's and then even sales, there's mental availability and there's physical availability, and you need to be doing both in order to actually make people think of you at the moment and purchase, or when they're in that environment for when they're about to purchase, you show up in the right way to help them make the decision. And social kind of does both, but as a whole, creatively, we're there to be remembered. We're there to evoke emotion. We're there to make people feel something. And if they're not doing any of that, we're not really doing a very good job. And what we've seen on social for quite a long period of time is we navel gaze. We're trying to chase the next big trend or chase who's doing it well. And everybody copies the concept and how they're doing it, not why they're doing it or what they're trying to achieve with it. And that's where people are going wrong. And again, when Ryanair was coming to town, what we did, we learned from other types of marketing of the past and around. It wasn't anything new. We have thought leaders, and again, using inverted commas for a reason, because they don't rate most of them, because they just talk to their arse for sign up for emails so they can make money. But a lot of them say that, you can only do social in one way, and it's bullshit. They also use, they throw around this term called unhinged marketing, that brands being brash and brazen and disruptive on the internet is wrong. It's says who? There's no such thing. It's not black and white. And I always use past reference points to try and get people to understand why we need to do the same thing in the future. And unhinged marketing or disruptive marketing is nothing new. In the UK and Ireland, we would have had, again, I can't remember if it's in Australia, but Tango, which is this drinks brand. And for many years, they would have done TV commercials with an orange dwarf with one leg, but his other leg was in his hand, and he'd walk around the street slapping people in the head with his orange leg, saying, "You've been tangled." But yet a green owl on TikTok dancing to something weird and wonderful is unhinged and wrong. This is nothing new. So where am I getting to with my point? We need to have a point of difference in marketing. You need to stand out from your competitors and everyone else. If you're not doing that, you're not marketing. You're not actually trying to convince someone. You're just looking like everyone else, behaving like everyone else. And that's what's happening. Marketing has become dull. And social media has so much pressure that you need so much volume and compete so fast that everybody does the same thing. And in most cases, in most categories, if you remove a logo and their brand palette, you can't tell who they are and what they represent or what they're trying to do. And that's half the battle. So if we're not catering to being mentally available, if we're not catering to having a point of difference to make people feel something or understand what the hell you aren't trying to do, you're really just making content for content's sake. And you're feeding a machine that is just finding little bits of moments for people to engage with. And it's the end user and the platforms that are benefiting, and you're not. And if you're a brand or business, no matter how big or small, you're investing time, resource and budget here. And again, this sounds dramatic, but if people don't start to think more strategically about how they use these platforms, well, why are they there in the first place? They shouldn't be. It's a waste of time. There's probably plenty of other marketing tools or tactics or even sales promotions that you could be doing to convert people that would be a hell of a lot more effective.
And something interesting in the way that you've approached it over the years has been very much about, obviously bring awareness, have some fun with it, don't take yourself too seriously. But the other thing I noticed on socials is that there isn't as many call to actions. We're sales. This is, we're like, well, how do we take that view and turn it into something that will make people want to buy? What's the decision there?
Can you convert people on social? Of course you can, but there's certain ways to do it. If you think that organically it's on your own brand accounts, that's the best way to sell, you're probably missing the opportunity of what organic content can do. But there are many ways to use it. If we're talking pure organic here, the advice is normally to stay away from kind of heavily sales promos, because people aren't there to be sold to, they're there to enjoy content. The two main motivations people go to these platforms, one is to be entertained, and two is to escape from the shit show, the chaos that's going on in their adult lives. And that's in small bursts throughout the day. So in certain moments in time, they're not looking, but that doesn't mean it doesn't work. Sales are still very effective on these platforms, but you just need to do it in the right way. And what do I mean by that? Using direct response ads is an amazing way to sell on these platforms. Organic is technically selling. You're just building mental availability. It's just most times at that moment in time, they're not ready to buy. But it's one of the cues holistically that's probably going to make them think. If I'm searching for, right, I need a new laptop, and they start then doing their usual, I guess, purchase journey of trying to do that, they'll start searching for laptops. Then they'll see that there are 5 or 6 options. They all look the same. They're all around the same price. Oh, but that's that one I saw on the internet that did that thing with the yoke and it kind of remembered me. I like that brand. That's the job of what organic content, or sometimes, again, brand building is doing on the internet. So it's really important to understand that for the majority of what you do in these platforms, you have to cater to entertainment and top of mind awareness first. Again, going back to what we said earlier, evoking emotion, becoming memorable. If you become memorable, it's half the battle of actually getting people to convert. Then once you've done that really well, there are plenty of other ways where you can actually sell on these platforms. And we mentioned it, paid social. Between all of those moments of entertainment, there may be a lovely ad that appears for that laptop for sale. But again, how does that become even more effective? Well, if you did all the work of organic search and all these touch points, and they are actually on your site or a site at this moment in time, where they're looking at that laptop, and then the next time when they're on social media, they randomly see the same laptop with a 10% off offer in a paid ad between the funny cat videos and the picture of Harriet's mum's bottomless mimosa breakfast she had last Sunday after City to Surf. It appears there. That's a very effective way to do it, because you have now put a piece or a product in their newsfeed after they've showed signals of intent, which means that there's a higher chance they'll buy, but they weren't ready. So you add in a kicker, now they're ready. You can even use creators. It's the same. There's no right or wrong way. But if you start at the very start of what we try to do, it's brand building at its essence. Everything else you build around it in more sophisticated ways to try and convert people. But it's all sales at the end of the day. I know people hate saying it, but that's our job. It's just we're maybe the softer approach and we're the entry point. Maybe more hardcore sales are the ones who need to work hard. And that's where performance marketing comes in a little bit more, particularly on social media.
Yeah. And I think, everything you've just described there, I think goes way beyond what most people have thought about when it comes to socials. And I know for me, building this business 4 years ago, we started off on Instagram. That was I love LinkedIn, and I do want to circle back to LinkedIn, but Instagram was the place where we started, because it was easy, it was accessible, it didn't require a large budget. But what were we doing on there 4 years ago? I couldn't tell you why. I couldn't tell you what we did. I couldn't tell you that, the goal. I just know that we were trying to fill a mastermind back then.
But most people are like that as well, because even when you start asking those questions, and I do this with my partners all the time, why are you on social? Because we know we have to be. What are you trying to achieve? Awareness. Great, that's good. That's a great start. But what are the problems you're trying to solve with the use of the platforms? Because if you don't know why you're there, then why the hell are you there in the first place? Because again, it is an investment. Businesses and people know that this thing called social media, it's big. There's billions of people using it every day. So there's an opportunity in how to use it. But nobody thinks about what they're trying to solve with it from a brand or business point of view. So therefore, they're just messing about, doing things with everyone. And this is where it becomes this tactical thing where we look outward rather than inward to try and solve problems that are genuinely important to us. So it always goes back to strategy for me. And again, finding out, what are the problems you need to achieve? How do we think they'll manifest? How do we think social can work? And then set a set of guiding principles to get you from where you are now to where you need to be next. Yes, that does need to be an entertaining way. Yes, that needs to be culturally relevant, born in a human truth, cultural truth, something that's relatable so you can grab their attention, that emotional hook. But if the message or the purpose of you there is not trying to solve a problem, again, you're only catering to the platforms and not to yourself. It's for everybody else and not for you. And that doesn't make sense.
And people are driving and they're striving after that, the viral, something to go big. But for what reason? What's the goal?
And it's becoming even more challenging because back in our Ryanair days, trends was the entry point to accelerate growth. And it is being topical, being relevant. And in platforms like TikTok, if you can hit the right trend at the right time, and we would have had discovery methods and tactics and some sort of calculated method, theory to what we think is the right moment. And that was a process built up, and we conditioned that process to see and increase the likelihood of us getting the success from those trends. But as the trends started to become popular and people spotted it, and as now more brands and businesses are letting go, and it's probably even the SMEs have let go of a hell of a lot more, because again, the challenger brand small, they don't have the bureaucracy and the layers of approvals. They can actually do it faster than some of the bigger businesses in the world. But now that everybody's doing it, there's an even greater challenge of that. And it's, your point is really, really important. Like, jumping on the trend is great, and sure, you might get 1 million views, but what is the person taking away? And that's always been a problem. But now it's an even bigger problem, because now, say, take the demure trend that has been breaking around the world in the last 2 weeks with Jules. I forget Jules' surname. You know, very cutesy, very demure, and it's absolutely after exploding. But after the first 3 or 4 brands have done that, it's now become too late. But then everybody has jumped on the back, and you've seen thousands and thousands and thousands of brands and business and people using the same trend, because now they're all at a stage where we now understand trends. We've seen other brands. We've got permission to do it. But now that everybody's doing it, it's catering to the needs of the user where, oh, they like the trend, they're going to scroll and consume all the time. But now all they're remembering is the trend and the gag. They're not remembering the brand. They're not remembering the context you're trying to do. So now that you've gotten to a place where you understand where you can get reach, again, the problem is, and it goes back to the start, the problem you're trying to solve, the message you need to do, what makes you memorable. That's now the missing piece. And this goes back to the point even previous to this. There's a disconnect between future social media managers and marketeers that we need to bring together. Will the marketeers understand these platforms like the younger social media generation? Jesus, no. They get it. They're so brilliant, so talented. But we need to do a better job of educating them on how to actually do marketing. Yes, you're spotting trends. Yes, you're tapping into moments. Yes, you're being culturally relevant, but it's meaningless to the brand. Sure, you can show me that you got 1 million views of that video, but I know we can't measure properly, but how many people actually consume the message? Or if we did a piece of research to go, okay, we'll take a pool of 100 people. Out of that demure trend, can you tell us 10 brands that did that trend and tell us what the message was? There's probably a huge chance that they won't remember any of them. And I experienced that too personally. I consume TikTok way too much. Such an unhealthy relationship, such ridiculous behavior. But even when people ask me on podcasts, when I do these talks, who do you think do this social media well? I can struggle to name, because I'm binging and consuming. I'm being entertained, but I'm not remembering anything else other than the trends and moments.
Yes. And that's so important to be aware of, because like you said, then you jump on that trend. And that was back when, reels, and they started dancing things and lip syncing and all that. You don't remember what the actual thing was.
Nothing.
But you jumped on it because that's what everybody else is doing. So that's what we should be doing.
Now, there are brands who are winning that, but the takeaway message is these guys are great at social. It's not what the hell they do or I've purchased from them. It's these guys are great on social because they're there first on every trend. They're relatable, they're funny, and it works. Where it got better for Ryanair compared to others was how we followed up after every trend we hit with really important information done in an equally entertaining way. That's where the secret sauce was for us. That's what made it work. We knew that getting attention was the first step. It was, again, changing people's minds, which was changing the perception of flying low cost, where there was a lot of tension, and that was the major problem our strategy had to solve. Our follow-up content on a daily basis always leaned into those moments to understand the business model, to understand the low-cost model, and to lower people's expectations, or sometimes I say hate Ryanair less. And it wasn't just then measured off vanity metrics. We had a brand survey that went to 30,000 people every month. And we put a question into that to go, out of all the things and exposures you have to Ryanair, what makes you like the brand more? Now, I did ask in that question to go, how much it makes you hate Ryanair less? But the fluffy marketing team wouldn't let me do it. But essentially, why was that important? Because it's easy to present the numbers. It's easy to show anecdotal elements of how people are commenting on the content. And let's call it sentiment, for want of a better word. But even sentiment's so hard to measure that I try to shy people away from certain metrics. We needed something else to prove that it was really working. So based on that brand survey, we got back responses where in the first poll when we were in it, out of a poll of 10 in each area, 2 in 10 people said that Ryanair social media was the reason why they liked the brand more. There were 2 detractors and there were 6 passive. Now, you're always going to get detractors. People will have bad experiences with your business and brand. That will never change. Again, Ryanair are no different. But the good part for me wasn't the 2, it was the 6. It showed me that we had less detractors and we actually had 6 passive people who weren't sure whether it was or not. So we said, we've got room to do. Then over the subsequent polls of each quarter, it went from 4 out of 10 to 5 out of 10 to 6 out of 10. This survey started to show people outside of the vanity metrics of social that when we surveyed a huge pool of people in a good sample size, and 30,000 is a lot, social media was actually changing their perception about the brand, and we were showing that it was working.
And I think that, you know, as a Ryanair flyer, I think the social media for me has given, you know, you've really leaned into the fact of, you know, shit seats, or, you know, the fact that it's delayed, or the fact that you're in a stairwell. I know you used that example the other day, you know, of waiting. And it's then about bringing that through. And one of the posts that that really got me aware of Ryanair being on socials was a guy that had a jumper on with a little bum bag, and he commented, you know, the one, don't you? And he commented and said something about the seats or about the size of something. And then Ryanair commented and said, don't think we can't see your bag under your jumper. And it was that it's like, do you know what? It's, yes, we get frustrated about having to book the extra baggage, or about how much it costs when you get to the airport and you've forgotten to do it. But the reality of it is that we all try and sneak it in. Yes, I wear 3 coats when I go on Ryanair to Ireland because it's that cold. But also, you know, that's the only way I'm going to get it through. I was ready for everything. But if Ryanair took the piss out of me for that, I would have loved that, because we all know that we're pushing the boundaries in some way, shape or form.
And there seems to be like this funny, funny relationship with people. Like, price is going to be driving everything people do when it comes to travel and costs. And that's why Ryanair, no matter what we say or do, even if we never ran social media, and this is a great one actually, by the way, so I must say it. There was a time when I started and we were in a meeting room with the CEO at the time, Michael O'Leary, and I had other kind of senior people who would have been my line managers and bosses. They were kind of wonderful. I have to say, I'm remembering being in the room. That was one of the funniest moments ever. He came in, and he's a very, very smart guy. He's probably one of my business heroes. Like it lump, but reasons why I left the business or not weren't him. It was actually, and I'm obsessed about him. I think he's one of the most cleverest business people ever. And again, he is Marmite. But in the room, he went, listen, guys, I understand marketing. I know what you need to try and do with this. But I'm telling you, if I didn't have one person out on that marketing floor or spend one penny on marketing, this business will reach its target of 126 million passengers by 2026 without any of that, because the product is so good. When people like it or not, price will always determine how they fly. So what is the role of marketing for Ryanair? Silence. I sat there because I was probably the most junior person in the room, laughing to myself going, these bastards will not be able to answer this, and it's fucking hilarious, because they can't. Because they'll start talking about, again, the fluffy areas. When I went back, developed a strategy based on what that question was asked. And the biggest challenge Ryanair has, and it's perception, it's expectations. And if you can manage people's expectations, it gets easier then for them to travel without being frustrated. If they understand the procedures and policies, it starts with a seat and everything else is extra, well, then people know what they're getting and what they're paying for. And then if we can dial into, I guess, the humour and the legacy things like you mentioned that become this playground for people and for us, it tends to take the frustration away even further. And that's kind of part of the comedy as well, because the comedy is so real and relatable, you can't help but laugh because it's true. Everybody behaves in this way. So rather than shying away from that or saying you can't, well, we lean in on more and we challenge people to do it more, because it's funny. Because if you do get caught, you get fined. But if you don't, it becomes this kind of, I've got one over on Ryanair. And we're okay with owning that because we can't change that behavior. So why do we lean in on it? And again, another reference I use, and like Ryanair was this legacy meme in culture over in Europe anyway. Like if I popped into you in the coffee shop and, Harry, God, you have a lovely tan, were you away for a couple of weeks? And you're like, yeah, I went to Malaga who'd you fly? But Ryanair. And the second that asked or comes out of your mouth, the immediate reaction from both people is a tut and an eye roll, and for fuck's sake, Ryanair. It's just, we have this natural relationship to react like that because the idea of Ryanair is ingrained in culture. We became a joke to a certain amount of people that anytime people travel with us, even though they never have a problem, we're still a meme because we're a joke within the community. So a lot of other people in that moment would have shied away from that. They would have went, oh, we need to make people love us more. We need to be a warm, fluffy brand and customer service and customer friendly. We are customer first because it's all about the price of the ticket, and we put the hands of what they do into there. So that's a really great fucking product for people. But rather than lean away from the joke and let people laugh with us and try and fight against that, we saw that, well, why don't we lean into it? Because if people laugh with us, it's much easier when they laugh at us. And if we become more inward as well, we can use that lever of humour to actually educate and then lower people's expectations or make them feel something different about the brand in a different way. And again, we saw that anecdotally come through in the content. Like, you guys are shower robbing bastards, but fuck, you're funny. You get it. And that's what we wanted to get people to understand. Once we were able to communicate the expectations, once we knew all the cultural behaviours and human truths that were happening, and let people know we knew it and we were going to have fun with it, there's the emotional trigger, or the emotional hook that we needed in our content to make people hate us less.
Yes. Otherwise, you create this distilled beige brand, vanilla, that, you know, everybody's then trying to fit this middle ground. And I think there you've highlighted, obviously, you know, why you did it, how you did it. And I think, you know, the side that I come from this sales element is that, you know, everyone wants to say the right thing. They want to say they're doing the calls. They want to say that they're doing the outreach, and the businesses want to hit these numbers and do these things. And everybody else is being like, hey, we're going to teach you how to do that. And you don't have to do this, and you don't have to make a single call. I don't talk about that, because you do have to pick up the phone.
Of course you do.
You do have to do, you know, make the effort and do the activity. And I think that the moment when you go, hey, I've got this cool way you can do it, and hey, and it's all black and, you know, cloak and dagger, and come in and work with me, and I tell you what, I promise you'll never have to do this. We then become in this vanilla bracket, whereas they want people that stand out and say, actually, no, I'm going to call you out on your bullshit, and you are going to have to do it. And I stand in rooms of salespeople, and I talk about how much BD work do you allocate? And they say, oh, we've allocated 2 hours per week. And I'm like, cool, how much of that do you actually do? Oh, but it's in my calendar. And I'm like, so how much of that do you actually do? And then eventually I go, right, I'm calling bullshit. Anybody else? And then somebody else will try and fight me on it, and they'll give me, you know, their response. And actually, by the end of it, I'm like, okay, cool. Are we all here to agree that actually none of us are doing that? And everybody's like, yeah, okay, yeah, we've been seen. And it's about then calling out from that element. And I think, you know, it's about finding that shift. And for us, it's taken us a while to really find that landing point of being really confident in knowing who we are, what we do, and how we have an impact. And until you get to that point, there is that grey area. And I think we've experienced, and we definitely haven't nailed it yet. And I don't want to claim that we have. But from that business to business, and obviously from a Ryanair perspective, you know, you're dealing with consumers essentially that are you know, buying tickets and flying. Businesses are so afraid, and as you mentioned before, the SMEs are playing a little bit harder because they haven't got all of these levels of politics and requests and bureaucracy to be able to actually get it done. But how can businesses show up like that? How can they support their teams with this fear culture that we've got right now? You know, and if we use the example of LinkedIn, but you know, if we've got that culture, nobody wants to put themselves out on this platform and be like, me, my thoughts, my insights, you know, the way that we do things, and be really honest about it because they're so afraid. How do we get past that?
It's hard because it would have been easier to do it in the past because the people you were speaking to could never really speak back to you. So like when you were doing marketing of old, it was all one way, TV, radio, print. You could put your message in a compelling way to people. If they liked it, they probably would have got in touch. If they didn't, they wouldn't say anything. The difference with social media though is they can shout back at the ad, or they can shout back at the marketing. And that's where it's changed. And the second somebody sees one negative post, or they don't see it going viral, they think it failed. That's not the case. Like, conditioning and repetition is important. And if what you're saying is backed on good rationale and good thinking, or you're just there to disrupt for the sake of it, whatever decision you make strategically and how it's backed up, you've got to give it time. You've got to get past the echo chamber, especially like on these platforms when you're making a shift, because who you're reaching at that moment in time and what you're saying is going to be very different to who you reach next. And you mightn't even know who that audience is. You could be just reaching a small pool of high engaged users. It could be, again, just friends of the business, and the people you need to see aren't even being exposed to your content. You've got to give it some time. And if you're not doing it, you're not getting creative at repetition, or you're not conditioning you or the audience to understand who your proposition is, you're never going to win. I love this. There's two quotes I love using. One is from Jane Warren. She's the either former or current CEO of Dermalogica. And she uses this saying, you need to piss off the 80% to win the 20%. Like, you can't be all things to all people. If you sit on the fence, some people will like you, but not a lot. And some people will hate you, but not a lot. You're not shifting the dial, and you don't need everybody to like you, your product, or your business. You need the 20%. That's all you need. But if you're being put off by the 80% shouting down or not engaging or saying things or challenging you, you're in that echo chamber that you're never going to succeed. So you've got to break out of that, and you need to find ways to do that. And even in social as well, like, you're going to piss off loads of people. There are people on the internet who just won't like you, who just are there in that moment in time where their moral compass is on you and they're going to target you, or they're just dickheads on the internet, and that's not going to change. Compartmentalization, senior management team need to be helpful there. If you've got a young team or people on social, knowing that this is going to happen. Humans are just nasty sometimes on the internet, and sometimes with all the best efforts you do, it's something bad's going to happen. You need to protect and compare. And that's what I did with my team as well. We had plenty of moments where we completely failed. But by protecting the team, compartmentalizing, them understanding the big picture, we moved on. The second quote is a Kobe Bryant quote. Again, I'm a big basketball fan. Boos don't block dunks. If you never make a shot, you're never going to fucking take it. And it doesn't matter what people say in or around you. Even if you miss and they boo, that's okay. But if you don't miss in the first place, you're never going to figure it out. And I know these are wafty quotes, but the point is still true. We're too, like, in this world of social media in particular, we are too put off by the echo chambers and taking a one and done shot and thinking it doesn't work. It isn't. It takes time, effort, energy to get to a certain point where you find the people that actually want this, that need this, that will interact with it. And as soon as you get to them, they're going to interact or engage with it more. And then it's people around them and the people that are also like that will see it more. And what you've seen in the past of old, the negativity, the fails, that all slowly starts to patter out, because if they don't want that and don't engage with it, they're going to move on. You'll find your audience, but it just takes time. And we were the same at Ryanair. It was like, when we did this first, like, the comment sections of Ryanair content were absolute vitriol. Like, people just really on the internet hated Ryanair. And we were like, if we took this brave decision to go on the way we thought was right in the first few months or weeks, we never would have continued. But I knew the big picture. Like I knew how the people behaved on the internet. I knew that there are probably 90% of people who travel with Ryanair who get from A to B on time, no problem whatsoever. But they're not going to come and sing our praises, because it's just like a commodity in the air. But when we started to make the shift, we found those people. They were the people who got it. They humble brag. They knew the business model. They understood their expectations. So not only were they starting to get entertained by the content, they actually saw the Karens and the Keats of the world commenting ridiculous shit that they didn't read the terms and conditions, or they were complaining about a €10 flight and they didn't get a hot towel and a USB charger on a Ryanair plane. They actually came to our rescue, and that wasn't intentional in the strategy. That's just what happened. When we found our people, they came to fight our corner. And they completely transformed it for us. So it wasn't only, oh my God, I can't believe Ryanair said this about this person on the internet. It actually, no, guys, when you see the rest of the content, you're standing on the stairwell because of this reason. You're standing on the tarmac. They don't have screens for this reason. You know, their business model is this. I can't believe you're complaining about this because your ticket only cost you £10. We actually had to do it less, and our people came and found it more. So again, I know I'm rambling here, but the takeaway is you've got to be okay with, failing lots of times, understanding that there's an echo chamber out there, and you've got to compartmentalize one or two really bad pieces or comments, because they're going to happen. Don't let that get in the way of the big picture. Perspective is important here. And backing the strategy, because again, the strategy won't work unless you try and do it consistently. If you flip and flop and change too much, it's never going to work.
And do you think then humour plays a part in every approach, or do you think that's down to the brand and the people that are behind it? Because I mean, you and I enjoy humour. If I was going to look subjectively at somebody else's approach, for me, I enjoy bringing humour in. And sometimes I'm like, did anyone else find that funny, or was it just me laughing at my own joke? But is that for everybody?
Humour's probably lost its place in marketing for a while, because you've got things like Cannes Line, the advertising awards, where everything is about this emotional connection, trying to be good to the world, where it's big corporate brands talking absolute bullshit, lying, and people smell bullshit. Humour is just the easiest way to make people feel or think something. And humour can be done in so many ways. Humour is not one type. You've got satire, again, slapstick. There's so many different ways to be humorous that it is an easy way to grab people's attention and make them feel something. So it's always an easier route to do, but it's not the only way to do it. And again, it does go back to your brand, your DNA, what you're trying to do. All brands can be humorous if they wanted to be, even undertakers. There is an Italian undertaker, I forget their name, on social media, that are the funniest brand in Italy when it comes to using reactive social when tapping into trends. I forget their name, but they're absolutely amazing. And they're an undertaker. You're talking about death here, but they do it in a humorous way that it's, again, different. No other undertaker would talk about it in this way. They had a point of difference. They use humour as an entry point. To answer your question, humour helps. I think humour should come back more into a lot of what we do, but there are different ways to land humour, because you can evoke different emotions with it. But is humour the only way? No, it's not, but it sure is an easier way to do it.
And connect with more people in
Correct.
that way. You've now got all these partners that you're working with and doing, all of this great work, across those partners. And so how do you find, what's the challenge that I guess that you've come across with people saying, you did this at Ryanair, can you do that for us? And they've seen this one way of doing it and they want you to pick that up, put that into their business. How are you approaching that?
Well, I tell them from day one that Ryanair is the exception and not the norm. Okay, if you're coming to look for help on how to be a funny brand or insult your customers on the internet for entertainment purposes, you're not thinking about it in the right way. So I unpack it with them and I explain the method to the madness and why we do it in this way. And in most cases, when I explain that, they understand it and they want the method. I can give you this and you may not be this type of brand. Still, I'll find your way, I'll find your problems and I'll find the right way to do this. But then that can only be done if you've got the right team with the right freedom, the right conditioning and the right operation. If it doesn't, I can make you a pretty strategy, but the strategy is only as good as its operation. Now, there are some people who still want the Ryanair thing because they think that's right. I go, yes, we can look at that, but first can we actually do a piece of strategic work to make sure that it is the right decision? And if not, I'll come with the best rationale I can to show what you and how you live in this world could be. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of people who do come thinking like that. They just want the fame. They don't want profitability. And I'm not driven on the fame. I could not give a shit about winning awards. I could not care about clout. I know I'm doing podcasts and speaker events and I get that. I'm contradicting myself maybe a little bit here, but I do this for a couple of reasons. I do this because I'm really annoyed by what's going on in the industry right now, that the senior people in businesses don't respect the potential of social. They understand it, but they don't respect it. The younger generation are missing the mark on marketing knowledge, like we said earlier. So I think we should educate them better. There's a lot of spoofers out there, and I'm sure there are people who call me a spoofer too, but I'm okay with that. There's no right or wrong way to do it, and I'm absolutely fine. But we also have to earn respect to those senior people because we don't go into those rooms thinking marketing, thinking brand and business and speaking their language. So in order to get respect, we've got to earn respect. And I want to go on that journey of doing that. And I'm also building a business too. So this is great lead generation. But it has been a challenge to make people think differently. And again, the reason why I do these events too is that I kind of feel like I've set up the fame driving and what Ryanair did. So people think that it's the behavior is the right way. And I probably need to do a lot of this work, these talks and these podcasts to unpack that too.
Yeah. And it's education, isn't it?
Yeah.
Education around what you do, how you do it, and then what you can bring for that brand that aligns to that brand as well. So you said before about, jumping on, what's trending or what's happening right now, and you've got that limited amount of time. There's all these, we're so aware now of mental health and around the work-life balance, if I don't think that exists, but how do we actually give people the ability to choose their own approach? And so how do we balance that of we've got to get onto this, we've got to hit this note, and we've got to finish by this time, or we can't push past the end of the day?
Like, I would only encourage people to use trending moments only if that is the solution to the problem you have in your strategy. Should everybody be jumping on trends or being topical and relevant in a timely manner? No. There are a lot of brands out there that could do really compelling things in social and create really great content in the absence of jumping on trends. If I'm being truly honest, trend jumping is the lazy form of social media right now. It's the easiest thing to do if you can turn around time fast enough. How it gets easier is understanding where to spot the moments. So the teaching discovery is important. Then it's the conditioning of being able to have the right people and the right process to concept on your feet to get out there. Because again, if you're not first, second or third, you're too late. So even in most cases, I when people, they want to be this, I tell them you can and could be, and you will get your moment from time to time. But if you're not set up in the right way to identify them before everybody else or ahead of everybody else, and your team is not set up to concept and deliver within a timely manner, I'd even question whether you should take that tactic in the first place, because it's a waste of time and energy if you're not going to be in the front. How we used to do it, we had discovery checks. So we found a method using Twitter, X and Reddit, and we built discovery processes to identify those moments and do checks throughout the day. And we would have had dedicated people who would have done that for the reactive and community side of our team. They would then take that into a chat environment where we had a thing called a shot clock. And the shot clock, again, basketball. You think of the beauty of basketball, 24 seconds on the clock. If you don't hit a basket or a bucket in those, it's a turnover of a ball. It keeps energy, it keeps you thinking, it keeps excitement in the game shot after shot. And it makes sure that you try and work hard and fast to hit that time. And we would have a shot clock for 5 minutes. When trend checks would have been landed, people will go in. You've got 5 minutes on the clock. You pick an idea. If you think you can concept it, tissue it, make it in the 5 minutes, it stands a chance of going out live. So did that happen at first? No. Would have took the team maybe 30 minutes, but the method was about cutting the time down to get the turnaround to be quicker, conditioned, quick-witted, faster. So we were turning around ideas in 5, maybe 10 minutes. If they needed a little bit more time to design something a little bit better, we gave them that time because we felt that the idea deserved it to give it its best chance. But it meant that we were always ahead because we were doing the checks before everybody else. We were then concepting on our feet and turning it around fast. And then we were getting it live within minutes. And again, the other privilege I have to caveat, and this is what people, because I know it's frustrating for a lot of other brands and businesses, maybe SMEs, not so much because the approval processes are easier, that we had the license and the approval, but stop with me and nobody else. Because we developed a policy and a procedure with our legal team and our senior team to go, here's the things we can say and do and behave. If we want to do something a little bit more over the line, these are the people that need to review and approve. But once we had this, we played within the box and we got better at that over time. The approval, the conditioning, the process, and finding those moments earlier are your gateway to doing it fast. But again, I will caveat it, if you can't do it in that way, I think it potentially is a waste of energy for most brands or businesses, because by the time you do get it and do get it approved, it's too late.
Personal brand versus business brand.
Is there a difference? Personal brands are, again, I think they're probably, another accelerant to startups and small businesses, because again, it's a person, not an entity. So people can find it more relatable. And we love the content and storytelling of building business, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So personal brands are really great to help accelerate that. But there'll always be a moment in time then, is if your business does well, when is the point do you transition from personal to business brand, or do you keep both running? I love personal brand building right now on the internet. I think it's fantastic. There's so many great professionals out there doing it. And funny enough, sometimes it can be a better option to invest your time in that than actually a brand account in the first place. So again, that goes back to strategy. It goes back to understanding what is the problem you need to solve, how can social solve it, and do you have the time and resource to execute on? And it's a great point, and it makes me think even now on my feed here that if you're a small business and you have a team, 4, 5, 10, 20 people, but you only have the capacity to have maybe one full-time social media person to deliver the work. Is there better time and effort in maybe developing a personal brand piece for the CEO or the person who concepted the business, who's already doing interesting work, who already maybe has a bit of clout, and actually spending time on actually building their personal brand in its infancy and not the brand itself? Because again, there are probably plenty of other performance-led ways that you could be spending your time to convert people on the product and allow all the energy to go into building a personal brand. It certainly warrants good consideration to how that could help. If you look maybe at the likes of a Stephen Bartlett or Grace Beverley from Tala in the UK, that in most cases their accounts are performing better than their business accounts because of all that work and all that interest. Can you probably quantify or equate to the personal brands actually converting more people? You possibly could. So yeah, I don't know if there's one or the other. I think it depends. It depends on where you are as a brand. If you're a FTSE 100 and you're well established and your CEO has never been on social, or they don't have a personal brand in that context, maybe then it's a decision whether you do or don't. But I think it's where you are in your business, your life cycle, whether you're a startup or established, how good those accounts are, and whether you feel that your CEO or your boss is better served at maybe storytelling or solving the problem better than what the brand could, if there's maybe a trust issue. And again, my answer to most of these questions will be, it depends. And it will always go back to, what are we trying to do here? What problems did the brand or business have? How do we think social can solve it? And then finding creative ways to do it. And one of those creative ways could be, we focus on our boss rather than the brand for the next 2 years. We put all our time and efforts into building their profile on social, knowing there's a better chance of them actually cutting through more than the actual brand, because people know the person, they don't know the brand, and we'll revisit that when we feel we've hit a certain level here. and then we evolve and change and pivot.
And how do you feel about building a personal brand within a team? So, for example, salespeople, they're on LinkedIn, they work for a company, the company posts white papers every now and again, if we're lucky, and then the sales team then I want to use LinkedIn as a sales platform or as an awareness platform. What's your views on that, and what's your views on what should we be giving them to be able to build that?
It's an interesting one, and it's actually in sales, in marketing, in social, it's becoming an interesting topic that I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. And at the event we were at a couple of days ago, this came up too, that if you put your sales team in your content, they become the faces of the brand. And there's a risk and a reward, risk and reward for doing that. You're building their profile, they're building trust. People are going to come to them for potential leads and sales. And that means that we all win. The risk is also if they then get an offer and go somewhere else, you've got to do it all again. And this becomes this fear. I think building their brands is important because it's an opportunity for them to put themselves out there, become the face of a brand or a product, and convince people more to actually trust. And I hate using this line, but people buy from people. And that's why it's important. I think what we need to understand is, and again, I don't have the answer because I'm trying to probably unpack this myself, is what happens in those moments when they do move on. Because when you do give them a platform, you are elevating them in their career. You're putting them out to the market, not only for people that you want to convert, but also your competitors. And if they build a personal brand, they get lots of following. There is a chance people are going to want them because of that. I think how you potentially start to solve that is transparency and good relationships between you and your team, to know that if we do this, I know I'm doing this, that at some point you are going to hit a moment, and then those moments will come, and that's great. But once we're all committed into the goal we need to achieve, there's a happy common ground. I don't know if this is the right explanation, but Dave Jorgensen, who was from the Washington Post, was asked this question at the event, on the second day. And it got me thinking that we need to almost treat our team and our people, if they're doing the day-to-day work, but also using social as a way to help improve how they convert their work, we should potentially start thinking of them almost like professional footballers or athletes, where we know that there's only a certain amount of loyalty to what they do at that moment in time. And you'll have lifers and you'll have people who'll climb the ladder and go, but there'll always be a time where there's going to be a transfer and they're going to move to another team and they're going to wear another jersey. But once there's a common ground that they give you everything as a professional in this moment, I think everyone becomes more comfortable on that behavior happening. So it reduces the risk of them being public facing. It reduces the risks of them being on camera. It reduces the risk of building their personal brand, because in that moment in time, when they're working for you, once that transparency and that relationship is there, you would hope they would give you your best for the business. And then that at some point this is going to change. Again, this is not a great explanation, but even I'm trying to unpack this myself because it's difficult. We had people, and there are people, and there are brands who are potentially missing out on growth and opportunities because they want to be faceless. They don't want to put their people in it because of all the things we've just unpacked. I think maybe it's a time we need to let go and understand that this is how marketing and how it's moving. You need to be okay with people moving around, but you just need to make sure that when they are with you, they're committed. And it's not just on them, it's on the business to make sure that you support that, because if you support that, they'll give it to you.
Yeah. And it's that trust
Yes.
element whilst it's there as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And so what's next? What should we be looking for in the industry? What should businesses be thinking about now? Is it still the social media platforms that we currently play on? And people that are not on TikTok, should they be on TikTok? Is LinkedIn ever going to be as good as the other platforms? What are your thoughts?
I think we're going to be safe in what social media is right now for the next 20, 30 years anyway. We have millennials and X's that this is what we do. We're not going to change from this. But Gen Alphas and people who are coming underneath, the certain signals we're seeing right now is that they are more comfortable sharing to a smaller group of people, not the entire world. So community-based, smaller group environments, dark messaging, dark chats is where a lot of that behavior will happen. There still will be a space and place. There's enough people using these platforms, Instagram, TikTok and everything for the foreseeable, that it is a value. Your point on TikTok is at a very difficult entry point for people right now to win in that space. And unless you have this secret sauce, extremely interesting niche, something that's different, it's going to be very difficult to win because it's so saturated. Like in most cases, if you can find that, great, have a crack, test, learn and play, it may work. But for me, brands or people coming at this moment in time, it's a challenge to get up to the levels of what it was a number of years ago, because the platforms are selling ads now. So they're going to, again, limit reach for brands. So using creators, using personal accounts, using personal brands is definitely one way to look at it. Paid media is probably the smartest solution for most people to use the platform now. But again, the creative has to be in the right way. LinkedIn I love, but I love to hate it, but I love it at the same time, because it's one of those few platforms that is still giving you ample amount of really good organic reach to do very clever things. The simple thing I tell people is, don't be like all the other white collars on LinkedIn. Be the opposite and stand out. People still think LinkedIn is this corporate platform where you need to speak like a corporate. No, it was that place, but that doesn't mean you can't behave in a distinctive way on these platforms that makes you stand out. It's not robots we're talking to. It's not the C-suite only. It is people who work in business that use that profile. And if you do it in the right way, you're going to stand out. So I still see a good life for LinkedIn for the foreseeable. We just need to shake it up. Any other platforms that are shining a light? There's loads of ones trialing and testing, but nothing that stands out right now. It's probably moving into the world of dark messaging. Like, we're not going to see anything change. Instagram is probably doing a really good job of holding on to a really good foothold by stealing formats, but also the multiple feed environment it has. And it's that kind of one platform that is still holding on to millennial, Gen X's and Gen Z's in one place within arm's reach. And that's probably one of the best environments to play in. If I was giving anybody advice right now, I'd be starting there before I'd be starting in TikTok, because there's a greater chance of success.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning into the Sell Like You podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and be sure to subscribe to never miss another one. A huge thank you to Vitality House for hosting today's recording, and I look forward to being back into your ears soon.